No one in the city remembered when the old garbage-collecting woman first appeared, because she arrived the way shadows do, quietly, without announcement, blending into the background of everyday life. She wore faded clothes layered one over another, a scarf pulled low over her head, and gloves that had been mended so many times they seemed more thread than fabric. Every morning before dawn she pushed a rattling cart through the narrow streets, collecting discarded things with a patience that felt almost reverent. People barely looked at her. Some stepped aside without thought. Others wrinkled their noses, and many pretended she did not exist at all. What no one knew was that beneath the stooped posture, the deliberate slowness, and the carefully practiced cough was one of the wealthiest men in the country. Raghav Mehra, founder of Mehra Industries, a billionaire whose name was whispered in boardrooms and printed in glossy magazines. For years, Raghav had controlled empires with a steady hand. But now his greatest concern was not markets or mergers. It was his family, and more specifically the woman his only son had married. Raghav's son Arav had married Naina 2 years earlier. She was beautiful, educated, and impeccably mannered in public, admired by friends and praised by relatives. To the world she was the perfect daughter-in-law. But Raghav had learned long ago that appearances were fragile things, easily polished and easily cracked. He had grown up poor, had known hunger and humiliation, and had built his fortune from nothing. Because of that past, he trusted actions far more than words. Since the wedding, something had unsettled him. A tone in Naina's voice when she spoke to the house staff, a flicker of irritation when charity events dragged on too long, the way her kindness seemed to dim when no one important was watching. Arav, deeply in love and busy managing a branch of the family business, dismissed his father's concerns as overthinking. Raghav smiled and said nothing more, but the doubt remained heavy and persistent. It was then that Raghav conceived the plan that would change everything. He would disguise himself, step out of his mansion and into the unnoticed world, and observe his daughter-in-law without the shield of his identity. Not as a powerful patriarch, not as a wealthy benefactor, but as someone society trained itself to ignore. He chose the disguise of a garbage-collecting woman because he knew how invisible such people were, how rarely they were treated as human beings with dignity. If Naina's kindness was real, it would appear even when there was nothing to gain. If it was an act, it would dissolve the moment she believed no one important was watching. The transformation took weeks of careful preparation. Makeup artists were paid discreetly, clothes were sourced from distant neighborhoods, and Raghav practiced walking with a slight limp, speaking in a higher, rougher voice. When the mirror finally reflected the person he would become, even he felt a strange jolt. He did not recognize himself. The power he had worn for decades vanished, replaced by vulnerability. On his first morning in disguise, he left his mansion through a side gate before anyone was awake, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. For the first time in years, he was stepping into the world without protection. The Mehra mansion was located on a quiet upscale street, where garbage collectors usually arrived in uniformed trucks. Raghav's presence there, pushing a cart by hand, was unusual but not questioned. People assumed he was a temporary worker or someone from another area. As he approached the mansion, the gates opened and Naina stepped out. Dressed elegantly, her phone pressed to her ear. She barely glanced at him, her conversation flowing uninterrupted as she walked past. Raghav felt a sting of disappointment but reminded himself this was only the beginning. He parked his cart near the entrance, sorting waste deliberately, slowly, waiting to see if anyone would acknowledge him. Moments later, one of the housemaids emerged with a large bag of trash. She dropped it near the cart without a word, avoiding eye contact. Raghav thanked her softly, testing the voice he had practiced. She paused, surprised, murmured a quick reply and hurried back inside. The exchange was small, but it confirmed something he already knew. People were unaccustomed to being thanked by those they considered beneath notice. As the sun rose higher, Raghav continued his work, his back aching, his hands dirty, his mind sharp and observant. This was no simple test. It was a journey into a truth he feared and hoped to discover at the same time. Days turned into weeks, and the old garbage-collecting woman became a familiar figure on the street. Raghav learned the rhythms of the neighborhood, the times when people left for work, when children walked to school, when delivery trucks blocked the road and drivers shouted impatiently. He also learned what it meant to be unseen. Conversations stopped when he approached. Smiles disappeared and doors closed quickly. Yet within that invisibility he found clarity. Stripped of status, he saw the raw edges of human behavior, the way kindness and cruelty revealed themselves in small, unguarded moments. Nina's interactions with him were infrequent but telling. Some days she ignored him completely. Other days she wrinkled, her nose at the smell of garbage, and gestured, impatiently for him to move aside. Once, when he accidentally brushed against her car while maneuvering his cart, she snapped sharply, scolding him for his carelessness without bothering to see if he was hurt. Each incident lodged itself in Raghav's chest like a stone. He reminded himself not to judge too quickly. Everyone had bad days. Everyone could be impatient. But the pattern was difficult to ignore. One afternoon, as Raghav rested briefly on the curb, he overheard Naina speaking to a friend on the phone. Her voice was low but clear enough. She complained about the inconvenience of living with so many people, about servants who needed constant supervision, about charity events that felt like obligations rather than causes. Then she laughed and said something that made Raghav's hands tighten around the handle of his cart, that poor people were poor because they lacked ambition, that helping them too much only made them dependent. The words were casual, spoken without malice, but they revealed a belief that chilled him. This was not the worldview he had hoped his daughter-in-law held. Yet the test was not over. Raghav wanted to know how she would react in a moment that demanded action, not just opinion. Fate, as it often does, provided such a moment unexpectedly. One evening, as a sudden storm broke over the city, rain poured down in relentless sheets, streets flooded quickly and traffic slowed to a crawl. Raghav struggled to push his cart through the water. His shoes soaked, his scarf heavy with rain. Near the Mehra mansion, he slipped on the wet pavement and fell hard. The cart toppling over, garbage spilling into the street. The impact sent a sharp pain through his hip, and for a moment he stayed on the ground. Breath knocked from his lungs. Cars passed, splashing water. Drivers staring but not stopping. The rain blurred his vision as he tried to sit up. Then he heard footsteps approaching quickly. It was Naina, hurrying toward her car, an umbrella clutched in her hand. She saw him on the ground, hesitated, and looked around as if hoping someone else would intervene. Raghav watched her face carefully, his heart pounding louder than the rain. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, she sighed, stepped closer, and spoke, not unkindly but not warmly either. She asked if he could stand, her voice edged with impatience. When he said his hip hurt, she frowned, clearly conflicted. Finally, she signaled to the driver waiting in the car to help lift him to the curb, but she did not get her clothes wet or touch him herself. She left some money near his cart, told him to be more careful next time, and hurried away, shielding herself from the rain. As the storm raged on, Raghav sat there, rainwater mingling with the ache in his body and the ache in his heart. She had not been cruel, he admitted. She had helped in her way, but it had been the help of obligation, not compassion, the minimum required to feel decent, not the instinctive response of empathy. When the rain finally eased and he made his way back to the small rented room he used for the disguise, Raghav felt older than he had in years. The test had revealed something important, but it also raised a painful question. What should he do with this truth? The final phase of Raghav's test came sooner than he expected. A few days after the storm, Naina announced she was organizing a large charity fundraiser at the mansion, inviting influential friends and business associates. The event was meant to showcase the family's commitment to social causes, and preparations were elaborate. Raghav, still in disguise, knew this would be the moment of reckoning. Charity, after all, was where words and actions often diverged the most. He positioned himself near the mansion on the day of the event, his cart slightly more visible than usual, his posture more fragile, his movements slower. Guests arrived in luxury cars, dressed in expensive clothes, stepping carefully to avoid puddles. Some glanced at him with mild curiosity, others with disdain. Inside the mansion, speeches were made about generosity and responsibility, about uplifting the less fortunate. Raghav listened from outside, the irony almost painful. At one point, a catering supervisor came out and told him to move farther down the street, saying he was spoiling the view for arriving guests. Raghav complied silently, noting that Naina, standing nearby, did not object or intervene. Later in the afternoon, as the event reached its peak, A young boy approached Raghav timidly. The child was barefoot, holding an empty plastic bottle. He asked if Raghav had any food. Before Raghav could answer, Nina appeared, having stepped outside for air. She saw the boy and immediately stiffened, looking around nervously. She told him to leave, saying this was not the place for beggars. The boy's eyes filled with tears as he turned away. Something inside Raghav snapped, not in anger, but in deep, profound sadness. This, he realized, was the answer he had been seeking. That evening, after the guests had left and the mansion had quieted, Raghav returned home, not as the garbage-collecting woman, but as himself. He stood tall, dressed impeccably, his presence commanding as it always had. When Nina saw him, she smiled brightly, launching into a summary of the successful event. Raghav listened calmly, then asked her to sit. His voice was gentle but firm, as he told her a story of an old woman who collected garbage on their street, of how she was treated, of what she had witnessed. As realization dawned on Nina's face, color drained from her cheeks. When he revealed that he had been that woman, her composure shattered. She tried to explain, to justify, to say she had been under stress, that she had not meant harm. Raghav did not raise his voice. He told her that wealth and status were temporary, that true character revealed itself when no one was watching, when kindness brought no applause. He said he was not angry, but deeply disappointed. He explained that being part of their family meant carrying a responsibility, greater than comfort or image. It meant empathy, humility, and respect for every human being. Arav, who had been listening silently, looked at his wife with new eyes, the truth, painful but undeniable. The story did not end with punishment or exile. Raghav believed in growth, not humiliation. He gave Nina a choice to truly learn, to work closely with the people she had dismissed, to rebuild her understanding of compassion, or to walk away from the privileges she enjoyed without embracing their responsibilities. The path would not be easy, and change would not be instant, but it would be real. In the weeks that followed, Nina chose to stay. She began volunteering quietly without cameras or praise. She listened more than she spoke. She apologized where words could not undo harm, and she worked where gestures mattered more than excuses. Raghav watched from a distance, hopeful but cautious, knowing that true transformation was a long journey. The disguise was gone, but the lesson remained, etched into all of them. The millionaire had disguised himself to test his daughter-in-law, and in doing so he had tested himself as well, reaffirming the belief that wealth could build empires, but only kindness could build families.